Hello and welcome to the first lesson screencast for Year 10 Maths General at St. Peter's. This lesson is about exercise 2E of your textbook, which is budgeting. Now, the reason we need budgeting is because if we added together all of the things we need, plus all of the things we want in life, those things most likely would exceed our income. And that's a problem, because if we don't have enough money to buy all of those things, and we're not careful about it, we'll end up spending more money than we actually have access to. So budgeting allows us to make intelligent decisions about how we spend our limited resources in life. It is a skill which is relevant to anybody who is in charge of finances. Students living out of home, families, couples who live together, retirees who live off of their remaining savings, or business owners. All of these people must have control over their expenses so that they can live sustainably. So if this was a regular lesson, I might ask you to pause here and think about these things. So feel free to pause the video. Think to yourself, what sources of income does my family have access to? What purchases does my family make that we require in order to keep living? And what sorts of optional purchases does our family make often? Because these are the things we need to know if we're going to make a proper budget. Now, in order to budget, we need to know a few terms. So obviously we need to know about income and expenses. So budgeting is the act of keeping track of those two things, all of the money we receive and all of the money we spend. It's not always possible to use exact numbers for these things, so educated estimates are required as well. When we talk about expenses, we can break them down even further. So expenses can be either fixed or variable. Now, fixed expenses are costs which do not change unpredictably over time. So these are things like regular bills, including rent or electricity payments, or even phone or internet payments. Variable expenses, however, are costs which can vary from time period to time period. So food, travel, and entertainment, I never really know how much exactly I will spend on those things in a given week or month. So therefore, they require some estimation. Once we've kept a record of our income and our expenses, we can find the difference between those two things, because that's what we're really interested in. This is what's known as the balance. So the balance is equal to the sum of all of our income minus the sum of all of our expenses. So if all of my income in a given week is $200 and all of my expenses are $150, the balance is 200 minus 150, which would be $50. So that means I have $50 left to play with after I've made all of my necessary expenses for the week. So a positive balance means that money is being saved over time and that there is additional money left over for emergency and luxury expenses. A negative balance means that money is being lost over time and therefore there is no money left for emergency expenses. So this can be a real problem. If you have a negative balance, it means your savings are being depleted over time, and you also don't have money left over in a week for emergency things like maybe doctor or vet visits. Now, when we create budgets, we also have to consider a certain time scale or time period for them, because we need to have for example, a weekly, monthly, or yearly budget. We can't just say, I've got a budget in general. It has to have a time period to it. It often makes sense to make sure the time period for the budget is on the same time period that our income is on. Now, like I said, this can be weekly, fortnightly, monthly, or yearly. All income and expenses must be converted to this time period for us to actually make a budget. So let's do an example now of interpreting a budget, and then after this one, we'll create a budget together. So this question says, Fiona has a net annual income of $36,000 after her deductions. She allocates her budget on a percentage basis. So instead of saying exactly how much money Fiona spends on each of these items, mortgage, car loan, food, education, sundries, and savings, we instead have been given the information about what percentage of her income is spent on those things. So here in part A, we want to determine the amount of fixed expenses, including the mortgage, car loan, and education. So like we said, expenses can be broken up into fixed and variable. And in this case, we're only interested in the fixed expenses. Sometimes we'd have to use common sense to decide which expenses are fixed, but here they've told us it's the mortgage, the car loan, and the education. So now in part A, what we're interested in is what is the total amount. So the fixed expenses, it's equal to mortgage plus car loan plus education. Okay, so that means 20% of her income for mortgage plus 15% of her income for car loan plus an additional 20% of her income for education. And that's all of those percentages, we add them together, but it's that percentage of $36,000. That's how much she spends on fixed things. So 20 plus 15 plus 20 is 55%. So what we're interested in here is 55% of $36,000. And the way we work that out is we turn 55% into a decimal by dividing by 100. So that's 0.55. And then we multiply that by the $36,000. And in this case, 0.55 times 36,000 is equal to $19,800. So that means the total amount of fixed expenses that Fiona has in a year is $19,800. Now in part B, it's asking how much should Fiona save? And we look at the expenses table here, and it says that she puts aside 10% of her income for savings. So what we're interested in is 10% of her income, which is $36,000. So of course that's 0.1 times 36,000, which is $3,600. So Fiona's saving $3,600 per year because this is her yearly budget. Now in part C, we're asked, is the amount allocated for food reasonable? So if we look at the amount allocated for food, it's 25% of her budget. That might seem like a lot, but to really interpret it, we need to think about how much is she spending on food per week, because then we can look at it more objectively. So in total, Fiona is spending 25% of her $36,000 per year on food. Like we said, it sounds like a lot. Let's work out how much it actually is. So it's 0.25 times 36,000. And that's equal to $9,000. Okay, so that's $9,000 per year spent on food. What we really want to know though is how much is she spending on food per week, because that's easier to think about whether it's reasonable or not. So $9,000 per year, this is a yearly spending. If we divide that by 52, we get down to a weekly spending because there's 52 weeks in the year. So 9,000 divided by 52 is 173.08 dollars per week. Okay, so each week Fiona is spending $173.08 on food. Now that actually seems quite reasonable now that we've thought about it as a weekly spending. Okay, so that's an example of interpreting a budget. Let's take a look now at creating a budget. Now this isn't a total budget, this question, it's just a budget for running someone's car over a year. So we've been given some costs. We've been given lease, registration, insurance, servicing, and petrol. Now, each of these, though, they have different time periods attached to them. We've got per month, per year, per quarter, per year, and then per week. But part A, the question actually asks us to determine the overall cost to run this car for a full year. So what we need to do is we need to turn each of those spendings into a yearly spending. And first I'll represent them in a table, and then we'll be able to get them up to yearly amounts in order to do part A. So we have some things that are per week. We have some things that are per month. We have some things that are per quarter, so per quarter of a year. And we have some things that are per year. Now the expenses we have are lease, registration, insurance, servicing, and petrol. Now, just from the information given in the question, I'll fill out the parts of this table that I'm able to. So the lease is $210 per month. So that goes here. The registration is $475 per year. So that goes here in the year column. The insurance is $145 per quarter. So that will go here. And the servicing is $1,800 per year. So that goes in our yearly column. And the petrol is $37 per week, so it goes in the weekly column here. All right. Now, because we want the overall cost to run the car for a year, we actually want to fill up this yearly column all the way down. So to do that, we need to multiply the totals that we've got in other columns to get up to yearly. So for example, for our lease here, we know that the lease is $210 per month. Now to turn a monthly total into a yearly total, we have to multiply by 12 because there are 12 months in a year. So that means 210 by 12 is what will go in this column. And 210 by 12 is $2,520. So that means the lease has a 210 per month cost, but per year that's actually $2,520. Registration's already a yearly total. Now insurance is $145 per quarter. So something is per quarter, that means it happens 4 times per year. So we need to multiply that number by 4. And the answer for that is $580. And then service is already in a yearly total, petrol's in a weekly total, and because there's 52 weeks in a year, we take that total and we times by the 52 weeks of the year. And we get $1,924 spent on petrol per year. So now that I've got all of my figures in yearly totals, I can add them together to find the overall cost. So the overall cost is all of those numbers added together. Sorry about that. So the overall cost is equal to the lease plus registration plus insurance plus service plus petrol in yearly totals. So that's 2,520 plus 475 plus 580 plus 1,800 plus $1,924. Now adding all of those together, I get $7,299. So that's the overall cost for running the car in a year, because we got each cost and they took them to a yearly total and added them together. So that's part A complete. Now part B says, what percentage of a $70,000 salary would this be, correct to 1 decimal place? So we want to know the $7,299, what percentage of $70,000 salary is this? So to get to a percentage, we first need to represent this as a fraction. So 7,299 out of the $70,000 a person might make in 1 year. Then we take this fraction to a percentage by timesing by 100%. So using our calculator, that's 7,299 divided by 70,000 multiplied by 100. And the answer for that is 10.43%. So that's the knowledge required to do the budgeting questions in exercise 2E. But we're actually going to take this concept a little further in the next video, where we'll start talking about how we could use Excel to create and manage budgets. Thank you for listening.